Hello. Welcome back to A Heart Full of History, where we talk about all kinds of things, creating history books for kids filled with heart. And I am back with E.B. Lewis, the amazing artist who has done so many amazing books. But today I'm talking about a book I did with him called Seeking Freedom, the untold story of Fortress Monroe and the ending of slavery in America. And I'm so proud of this book. And I know you are too, EB.
I am
Um,
very proud of this book.
Want to give me your initial impressions of what you thought when you saw the manuscript?
Well, I hold on for one moment. Let me just to make sure my phone does not ring in the middle of a
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, absolutely.
So I
I
want to
put
turn
mine on
this
silent.
off. Yeah, turn this off completely. Now, yes. So my initial response is that when I get a manuscript, the first thing I do is I find a quiet place, in my studio, and then I sit down to um, to partake. It's just like a meal.
Yeah,
And so I sit down with a nice glass of something cold, chilled, or some tea. And then I
yeah,
just, let it, how will I respond to it is my question. Does it resonate with me? And books have to, because otherwise I can't, it won't get the best out of me if I don't. So I need to sit there, have this kind of cathartic moment. And
yeah,
when I read that, it's the kind of story that I like. It's the kind of story that speaks to me. It's a story that deals with humanity, and those are the kind of
yeah.
stories full of heart,
Yes.
full of empathy. And so when I read the manuscript, it's like, no, this is right in my wheelhouse. I knew that right away that this is a book that I wanted to latch my name to it, attach my name to it.
That's awesome.
It's a
I
powerful
thought of
story.
you. I thought of you immediately. I thought of you while I was still finding this. Like I found the story at Fortress Monroe unexpectedly, and I
Mhm.
thought of you like I because I admire your work so much. I told you, just like my hero, and you're the person to bring this. You, I knew you were the person to bring this story to show its full heart, because you just have that. You pour so much heart in all of your work. It's I admire so many. Don't get me wrong. I love a lot of artists, but you, I don't know. There's something about you.
Well, what it
You know how to
is
get to
that
the
I
heart.
know from when I came into this industry, I came in out of a fine art background, and not knowing,
Mm,
I knew the difference between illustration and fine art. There's a thin line that
interesting.
happens, and the thin line
Yeah.
really basically is, I mean, both are just very powerful art forms, but the thin line is that one is done for, it's a problem solved for someone else, as in illustration or commercial art, that you're taking on a
Oh.
problem that someone presents to you, with a commercial entity to it, attachment to it, and then you sit down to solve
Mm.
that problem. And the fine art is like you give yourself that problem. It's within. It's a problem that is given
Oh.
within. So that's the difference. And so,
Very
knowing
interesting.
that, I knew that I studied illustration and I studied fine art at Temple University Tyler School of Art, and
Wow.
but so I knew the difference. But
Mm.
once I got into this industry, I realized that this is something a whole different monster. This is not the same thing. This is not illustration. For me, this is
Mm.
storytelling, visual storytelling.
Yeah,
So I don't consider myself
absolutely.
a illustrator. I consider myself a visual storyteller. And so I love story,
I
and
agree
so
with you.
what I'm
Totally. Yeah.
doing is
Yeah.
I'm actually taking a great story and translating it into this visual format, my language.
Yes.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
when you get a
I
story like
yeah.
this, yeah, when you get a story like this, it's full of meat, and it has the action in it, it has the component of the attach of, somebody. Well, it's pain too. You got, you're talking about the Civil War. Oh,
Absolutely.
you're
Yeah.
talking about slavery. You're talking about um, people under this in atrocious condition, these atrocious conditions. So
Yeah.
you can't just go at that half-heartedly. You have to come at
No.
that full
Yeah.
throttle, because you don't want to leave
Yeah.
anything out. You don't want. You want to. I want to honor the individuals that we're talking about. I want to honor them.
Absolutely. That's so important.
And so
That's the
when I
hard
read,
thing too about this, though, because we don't really know the entire story of them. You know that they're. We only know they're. It's like George Scott, who is the hero of this story. He saves the fort. But we don't know what happened to him in the end. We know he went to ask for his freedom. We don't even know if he got it. It's
yeah,
so frustrating. So I felt it's so important to give him his due, especially because after that, he walked out of history again, and he needs to be known. He
yeah,
needs. I mean, he's an amazing individual that I never heard of. We hear so many people over and over again, right? But there's some people we just don't really know, and
that's one of
they
the
should
things.
be. They need to be known, especially
That's
someone
one of
like
the
him.
things about this imprint. The imprint, the Astra Publishing, with
Oh yeah,
Carol
Calkins
Porter
Creek. Yeah,
and Barbara Gresner, who was the
Calkins Creek books.
editor
Yes,
and art director. That they
yes,
choose books primarily that are unsung heroes, individuals that we don't know of.
absolutely.
And that's one of the things I
Yeah,
love about them. These are stories that in the mainstream of publishing will probably not be touched, because
you're right. You're so right. Yeah,
they don't see the dollar sign, you know. And for me,
yeah,
it's about, it was always for me in work, and it's always about leaving something behind. Doing this work that
yes,
I know that at the end of the day, I did something that was important, that I left something behind for
yes,
someone else to come, to enjoy and appreciate and to understand these stories, these individuals that we are
yeah.
shining light on now.
Yeah, and I mean, but isn't it shocking how they're not known? I mean, okay, even Lincoln, okay. I mean, his in his first inaugural address, this shocked me. He stated, "I have no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists. I believe that I have no lawful right to do so, and I have no inclination to do so." He didn't want to end slavery. Did you know that?
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that because they talk about him like the great emancipator.
This was a whole. When you look at the history, when you really go and delve into the history, you realize the things that we have been told and taught throughout history. A lot of them,
Yeah.
are questionable. You have to go and do your own research. And so what's
Well,
happening
right?
today? Today, you look at the reasons why these books like this one are going to be banned. They're
Yeah.
banning these books, and it's the it's the narrative. It's not the book itself. It's the um, the nature behind the book,
Yeah.
the issues behind the story.
Right.
That these are stories, these are images that we want to hide. We want to hide the idea. It's the idea, really.
Yeah.
They're attacking the idea. It's not the book, but it's the idea. It's the idea that this actually happened.
Right.
We don't want the world to know. The world knows, but we don't want our children to know that this actually was something that we did, that we were a part
Yeah.
of. And so it's the idea.
Yeah.
And
I
so
hear you. Yeah.
the children are going to, it's unfortunate, that you feel so strongly that you are trying to protect your children from truth. That doesn't make sense in the concept, in the whole concept
No.
of truth. Why would you try to hide
No.
that? The truth is truth, and it's going to come out anyway. And it's going to,
I
unfortunately, when
well,
it does
is
come
it?
out, the children are going to
I,
despise you
I
for
question whether the
hiding.
truth is ever going to come out sometimes, because when I learned this, it's so clear. Lincoln said that in his first inaugural address. He said he didn't want to end slavery, and yet we proclaim him as the great emancipator. But
Yeah,
honestly, if it was up to him, he would not have ended slavery. you know
exactly.
and in fact, in the end, right before he was assassinated, he was speaking with we'll talk about General Butler, is the man that sort of, he's the one who made everybody contribute. We'll talk about that, but this guy, we don't really know. He's kind of a villainous in history for some reason. And Lincoln called him up, and not called him into his office and said, we have to do something. He was a racist. He said he wanted to send all the black citizens to Haiti. Can you
Yes,
imagine?
yes,
Okay, This is this only didn't happen. Nothing more happened with this because he was assassinated. This man was not the great emancipator at all. It
No,
makes
it's
me
not.
crazy.
Yes. But
I don't
that's the
understand.
truth. There we go. Here we go. This is what we're talking about. This is the truth. And you can't. The
But
truth is going to be something.
why is it because he was assassinated that they made him into such a folk hero?
Well, this is what we do in this country. This is what we do.
Yeah.
We disguise and hide, and we find ways to um, elevate individuals because we don't. One of the unfortunate things about our country that I have to say is that our educational system is at problem, is at fault.
Hugely. Yeah.
Yes, and what I mean by that is that we don't teach critical thinking. You know,
Yes.
and critical thinking
Yes.
is important. It is valid. It is vital that
Yes.
we teach critical thinking so we can actually so we don't are not swayed by sound bites.
Yes.
That first we go in and we investigate and we assess and we critique and understand and fully understand before we make comment, before we make movement. We're
Yes.
taught that. That's something that is taught. It's taught through
I
the art.
know. I
You
have
know,
another blog and I just did a whole, I didn't even put it out yet. I recorded a whole episode on the lack of critical thinking in America. And it's so true.
we
I,
find
and
ourselves in this
I,
condition right now. We find ourselves in this
yeah.
situation right
Oh,
now
so much.
because of
Yes.
the lack of critical thinking. But
Yes.
it's dumbing down the masses. And this is not a
And
new
I don't,
thing.
yeah, I
This has
think it's
been
all,
done
this
through
is all on
ages.
purpose. Yeah.
You look at Rome, you
Yeah.
look at not Egypt, but you look at Rome and you look at what has happened with Catholicism. There was a time
Yeah.
where only if you didn't if the priest didn't say this is what you didn't have the ability to read yourself because you didn't read Latin. Latin was not
Yes.
taught. It
Yes.
was only given to
Yeah.
the hierarchies. So
Yes.
this is how you dumb down the society, and then we're doing the exact same thing. And so when you dumb down the
Yeah.
society, you allow you allow anything to happen, anything to occur, and we accept falsehoods as truths.
It's so true. But that's why I think our book is so necessary because this book, if this book falls into the hands of kids, it'll make them see that there's different stories here. Wait a minute, this doesn't exactly align with what
Yeah,
I've been told.
yeah,
Wait a minute, what are you saying? Like,
yeah.
what is this? Like, I mean, I'm pretty intelligent, I think, and I didn't know all this, I just believed oh, Lincoln's great. I didn't understand all this happening. And then even General Butler, well, okay. I'll tell the story of how I found I found this story by complete accident. Okay. I'm an American friend of Lafayette. I wrote a book about Lafayette in Washington called Revolutionary Friends. And Lafayette is so amazing because he was so against slavery. When he found out, when we became a nation of slavery, he said he would never have helped us. He would have never picked up a sword to help us if he knew that we were going to be a nation of slavery, which I think he was a little naive because it kind of was happening already, but whatever. He meant well. He meant well. So because I'm an American friend of Lafayette, I go. They have meeting every year. They have two meetings, and they go places wherever Lafayette stayed. So Lafayette had stayed. Well, we always go to Yorktown because he was the reason we won the Battle of Yorktown,
Mhm.
contrary to what Hamilton says. And then we always go somewhere else. Well, he had stayed at Fortress Monroe, now called Fort Monroe. He had stayed there when he came back for his tour of America after in 1824 and 1825, he came for a tour of America. And so Fortress Monroe was one of the places he stayed. Well, I was going to go home because I love the American Friends of Lafayette, but they're all like married people and I'm single. And it's like annoying after a while being with all these married people. I was like, I want to go. My friend was like, no, 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 you can't go. I know you're going to find your next book there. I go, I feel like you're lying, but now I have to go.
Yeah.
Okay. So Fortress Monroe is this like amazing place because it's exactly like it was then. Like nobody has messed with it,
That's what I
and
did. I took my models there. I
yeah,
went there. Yeah, we'll talk about
it's
that later.
amazing there. Yeah, and I really didn't know anything about it other than that Lafayette had stayed there. Well, it turns out we were able to go into quarters one, which is where Lafayette stayed. It was all closed down for renovations or something. They were doing something, not renovations, but they were fixing something. but the guy that one of our people was, um, he worked for the museum there, so we were able to go in when no one else could. And luckily, he brought us into the room where Lafayette stayed. And I know this is weird, but I felt something.
Hmm.
I feel like I do communicate with people that want me to tell their stories. I really do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people are like, I don't talk about it too much because people are like, yeah, sure,
Well,
but
no,
I
I feel the
look,
same way. I feel the
whatever,
same.
right? I just feel there's so many stories out there, right? But there's certain ones that want us to tell them. They know we're the right one for that story,
Right.
right?
Yeah, Coach.
And so he said, I want to tell you something about this room that happened here before we go. And he told the story. I'm going to make sure I get this right. Let's look at my back matter. It's been a long time. Okay. He told a story about three pioneers. They were named Frank Shepard. Sorry, I got it wrong again. Frank Baker, Shepard Mallory, and James Townsend. They were three enslaved men. Then the night that the Virginia seceded, they
Hmm.
stole a boat. And see, Fortress Monroe was in Virginia, but it was held by the Union. So even when Virginia seceded, it was still Union, much to the chagrin of of the Confederates. And
Hmm.
it had been designed by the guy that Lee. Lee, was one of us. And
Hmm.
then he had designed it as like impenetrable, but then he went to the other side. So his own thing worked against him, which is kind of cool. So these three men stole the boat because they didn't want to be taken away. They knew they were going to be taken further down south to build weapon stations. And they did not want to go, they didn't want to be taken away from their families. So they stole the boat, rowed across the moat, and asked for sanctuary. Now,
Hmm.
for some crazy reason, the Union had a policy of always returning enslaved people back to the Confederates. I don't get that, okay? But that's what they did. But that night, there was a new commander there, okay? It was General Butler, General Benjamin Butler, and he was a lawyer, and he was against slavery. So he said, "I'll give you sanctuary," because he was against slavery, and he didn't go for that returning. What's that crazy? But then he needed to have a legal reason to back up what he was doing, so that the Union people would accept. He called them contraband of war,
Yeah.
which meant that the Union could confiscate contraband because it was being used against them, like weapons against them. Well, these
Mhm.
men were being used as weapons because they were being forced to build weapon stations.
Right.
So when the guy from the Confederates came to ask for them back, he said, "No, I'm holding them as contraband of war." And the guy's like, "What are you talking about?" The guy first of all says, "You have to give them back
They
because
were
it's the law," or
property.
something like
It
that.
was the issue of
Yeah,
property.
but well, the right, but
The issue
but
of
then
property
Butler said,
makes it
"That's
contraband.
right."
Yeah.
But Butler first said, "You're not part of this country anymore. You just said that, so you have no right to ask for anything back." Which was
Right.
so true, right? And then he said, "And I'm holding them. Doesn't even matter. I was contraband." But everybody looked at it as a joke. Even the union people all laughed at it. Nobody was taking it seriously. The newspapers, I've urged anybody if they can to go to, you could look the stuff up online, but if you can go to Fortress Monroe, they have a casement museum there, and you
Yep.
can see all these things and it was just made into a joke. Ha ha ha, they're contraband, right? Well, it's the joke that ended slavery because they didn't, these people didn't care if they were what they were called, if they were
Mm.
getting a chance at freedom. So they
Yeah.
all started coming in by droves to the fort. And it was like the newspapers were covering it, and the Union people were like, whoa, they want to be free. Well, duh, right? I mean, can you imagine people wanting to be enslaved? Like it boggles your mind, right? It all happened because of this decision, and so much was made of it, and all these people came flooding there that Lincoln basically was shamed into ending slavery. He didn't really end slavery. He did
No,
the
he was
Emancipation
ashamed that
Proclamation.
he found himself in
Yeah,
a position that he had to go
yeah.
that direction.
But
Exactly.
it's all because of this one thing that Butler did that actually was made into a joke. But Butler was a great guy that like really was a firm. Thank God he was a lawyer and he thought of this. Otherwise, I don't think it ever would have happened. He was a really smart guy and he didn't bow to pressure. Everybody's like, "You have to stop this." He's like, "I'm not going to stop this."
Hmm.
You know, he
It's
wanted
the
to help
right.
people.
It's
I
the
mean,
right thing to do. When we talk, that's the
yeah,
issue. That's what this is all about. And
yes,
and we're not just talking about slavery. We're talking about anything, any atrocity that's done to any human being. This
Absolutely.
happens to be one. And
Yes.
so when you have to have, well, I, I don't want to use the word have to. It
Good
is
point.
really, it's really, a, it's the thing to do.
Yeah.
In terms of caring for one another, on this planet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
see, in my work that I do is based on, it's not, and I'm working on a book. I just finished a book on the issue of Passover and the stranger at the
Hmm.
gate, and allowing individuals to come in. And I'm not Jewish, but the
Right.
book that I've done is a book that is talking to, it shows the issues, and speaks to the issues of humanity, and
Exactly.
that's what my work is about, and so this
Yes.
whole this we when we create these terms of race and separate people based on it, I have issue with, even when I
Agreed.
sign, even when it's even and I've done this for as long as I can remember, when I'm signing an application and asking my race, what I put in is human. I
Yes. I don't answer either. Yeah. Yeah.
right
Yeah.
human,
It's crazy.
because I'm a part
Right.
of the human race, and that's period.
Agreed.
Period. That's it.
Agreed.
That's the way I walk through the world. Walk through this earth.
Yes.
And so the work that
Exactly.
I'm doing is based on that. So these libraries, these books that we're doing, I say, if your library at home, the library that you're building, that you have, does not reflect the world that you want to live in, you know, inclusive,
Yes.
then that means you need to check your library. And so that's what this, because
Absolutely.
this is important stuff, and this
It
is what
really is.
make us be able to. And I mean, people will cringe at the. I mean, some many. I mean, there are individuals that cringe at the thought of getting together, you know, living together in peace, and
That's
that,
really the only way we're ever going to survive is if we decide to stop all this
I'm going to
separatism.
fight
Yeah.
as long as I have breath in my body. And as an artist, that's
Yeah.
what I'm going to do. For me, it's about love, and I'm going to spread the
Yeah.
that notion of love. You know, notion of
I
love and
know. I
notion.
don't understand the concept of you have to be this certain. Like tribalism is something that people did. I guess they needed to survive way back when tribes were attacking each other. I don't really know, but I was raised without any of that. I was raised without a religion. I really don't. I mean, I know where my family comes from, but I don't attach anything to that other than that just happens to be where I don't put any undue stress on that. I just like, where are we now? We're humanity. We have to all love one another.
Yeah.
I
And
don't.
the
What's
planet.
the difference about all this
Love
stuff?
one another
You
and
know?
the planet in which we live in.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes, and I don't understand.
it's a simple
And that's
concept.
this
It's really
book.
a simple concept, but
Oh,
it's like,
I
unfortunately,
know.
it's
I don't
look
get
where
it.
we are.
Well, I think that our books really I always say this, the only hope really are young people, okay? Because they get indoctrinated into all this baloney, right? To the hate, we have to our books are like a punch in the wall of hate. They're like breaking through with shining light of love.
Yeah,
Kids, I don't think
that's a
anybody's
great way of
born
saying
hating.
it.
I
That's
really don't think
wonderful.
so.
It's a
You
wonderful
know,
notion. Yeah, that's a great. I
it
love this.
has to be. I can't stand it. And people are like, well, why do you write this? I remember even I've written books about the Revolutionary War. So I meet like those women that daughters of the American Revolution. So they're like, aren't you a daughter? I go, no, I'm not a daughter. Well, why do you write? Why do you write this? I have to be a daughter to admire what George Washington did. I don't understand this concept. And like I'm just writing what I'm called to write. It doesn't matter what I am, except I'm the messenger. I'm the one. I'm the one bringing it to you. It's a delivery that I was meant. It was my calling. I literally, when if you, I never would have thought I would be writing about this stuff when I was younger. I knew I was a writer. These stories literally called to me. They're like,
Yeah.
you have to come. You have to because there's
It's
so
like a
many
ministry. I
ideas,
mean, what
right?
you're saying is like the ministry. It's like a ministry.
Yes.
When you hear ministers and reverends and priests, what have you, they say it was a
Yes.
calling. This is something that I was called to do. And I
Yes.
think that's true and interesting in the way. And when I go to schools and I speak to kids, I realize that our children and I understand that where we are in our educational system. And so what I
Yeah.
do is understand that when I go and schools invite me to speak to the children, they assume that I'm going to come and talk about the art. And I'm going to talk about art and I'm going to talk about literature. But what I realized early on is that the whole audience that I'm speaking to, all of them, the majority of children there don't want to be artists, writers, illustrators, painters,
Right.
musicians. They have they have no care of wanting to be an artist or a illustrator or a writer or whatever, because I'm going there under that pretense, under that art, under that umbrella.
Right.
But once I realized it, and I realized, wait a minute, what can I do to get the body so I can speak to the body, the whole
Yes.
body, the whole audience. And I realized one of the things that we in this country, we do the three R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, but we leave
Yeah.
out what is important, and I think help children to get to find out why they're here, to have a purpose-driven life. And one of the things is that I there was a saying by a quote by Mark Twain: the two most important days in your life was the day you were born and the day you realized why you were. So that
Mm.
means to me that everybody has a reason for being. And it's our
Yes.
basically, why are you here? What is the
Yes.
reason you're here? Everything in the universe has a purpose. From the
Yes.
littlest bug, like this little bug, this little thing here that's
Yeah.
been around for eons. He's been here for, it looks like a pill, but it's a little bug. He's been around for eons.
Yeah.
And something that
Right.
happened in the ecosystem ceased him to exist. He no longer exists. He's
Yeah.
gone. He is extinct.
Yeah.
Everything in the universe, everything in the universe will feel the loss of that beetle or that little bug. That means
Yeah.
it had a purpose. That is across the board in the universe. That means each one of us
Yeah.
has a reason for being here. And unfortunately, if you ask an audience, and I've done this in large groups of audience, a large audience, I've asked the question by a show of hands, how many of you are doing what you know that you were meant to do? And you see very few hands go up.
Right. So true.
Okay? Very few hands go
So
up.
true.
And so that
Yeah.
means we're doing a disservice somewhere. We ask the wrong questions. The question we
Yeah.
always ask is, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's not what you ask a child. He
Right.
doesn't know. He or she doesn't know. What you ask
Exactly.
them is, what do you like to do?
Mm.
What do you enjoy doing? What can you sit down and do for hours? And many of them don't know that. So that means
Yes.
what our purpose is as adults, as teachers, as educators, is that we should then expose them to as
Yes.
many things as we can possibly, because it's about access. Giving them access to these,
Absolutely.
giving them access to these things that they can actually find and say, "Oh, whoa, man, this is amazing. This I didn't know this
Yeah.
exists. I didn't know I would
Yes.
follow this." And you think about
Yeah.
all these individuals that I've spoken, that I've walked in, just like this conversation we're having right now with you, is that something hit somewhere along the line and said, "I need to do this," and it struck a chord, and that's the
Yeah.
chord. That's the thing. That's that chip inside of each one of us that has to be
Yeah.
plucked. It says, and tune in. It's like, whoa, that's who I am, and it's across the board. I mean, and it's interesting. It's someone
Yeah.
who loves. And I sitting in the plane and I'm listening to conversations all the time. And I remember hearing behind me. These are two individuals, male individuals. They didn't know each other from a can of paint, but they sat down and for some reason, one mentioned about a car, and both of them had the full conversation about cars. They were in their
Mm.
glory about motors and engines and parts and the whole nine yards, and just like, that was their world. And
Right.
for me. I'm sitting there listening to it, like they found their purpose. They know who they are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's. I want children to find. I wish I had a pill that I would be able to drop every when they
I
walk into the
know,
store.
but I
And I
think,
would be able to drop
I
it
think, and
in
I
their
do
hand
this.
and say, "Take this,
Yes.
and you will find." So you can
Yes.
have a purpose-driven life. I had this conversation with them.
Oh, I
I had
know.
this conversation with them at
Yeah.
school in this auditorium,
Well,
and
that I do that too. Yeah.
when they leave, they're running home with this energy. It's like, and the
Yes.
teachers call me the next day, and they're like, your talk today, yesterday, the kids went home and their parents were coming and calling in and saying, "What happened?" I mean, my kid is like all of a sudden charged up. He's like, I
Yeah.
want to find, I want to find my purpose. I want to find my reason
That's
for
great.
being,
Yeah.
you know? And that's like, that's what I want. I want you to have that question. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's help them find that. Because that's why
Me too. I
many of them are
exactly
saying,
how I
dude,
feel.
at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we're failing them because we're not really teaching them to read because we have the literacy, our literacy rate in this country is at a crazy.
That's awful.
I don't even want to
I
talk about
please, I
that.
know.
You know,
I know.
but so they can barely come out of high school reading, and the reason why, and I'm that student. I'm the student that I'm dyslexic, extremely dyslexic, but also I
Hmm.
stuttered. And so
Hmm.
when I was growing up in third grade, and I remember this distinctly, where the teacher asked me to stand in front of the class to read aloud. They were not talking
Wow.
about dyslexia back then. And so I'm standing there and my
Yeah.
words are disappearing
Wow.
literally in front of my eyes. I will see a
Oh wow.
body of words, a group of words, and four of those words in that sentence will just drop out. And I will read.
Oh
And then I'm
no.
stuttering and
Hmm.
couldn't get the words out. And
Oh.
so the kids are laughing hysterically,
Oh
you
my
know.
God.
And so
Oh.
I became a problem child. I became that child. I
Hmm.
failed in third grade, and
Wow.
so I'm sitting there and going through the motion, literally going through the motion of just being. And I hated school. I hated
Wow.
myself. I hated
Hmm.
books. I hated anything that had to do with showing my inadequacies, you know,
Right.
not knowing who I was inside. I couldn't have this conversation. I didn't have the articulation to be able to tell my parents what was going on. They didn't know about. How could I tell them that this is? I
Hmm.
figured all the students. I'm just something wrong with me because I can't read correctly. I don't
Right.
read as well as the other students. I don't read as smoothly. I can read because I can read
Wow.
them when I stop
Oh
and slow
no.
down. But I needed to find something, my purpose in life, and I needed somebody to care enough to actually take me and drop me in the center of my tribe. That was art. Took me to a Saturday
Right.
morning art classes and took me for 6 years straight. Every Saturday, my uncle took me there and introduced me to this
Oh
world,
wow.
introduced me to books, made me a voracious reader. And
Really?
because,
Wow.
all because he knew that I failed the third grade. He knew I was failing. I was going to be one of these kids that was the victim. I was going to be, God knows where I would have ended up on that path. You know?
Wow.
And so
Wow.
I needed somebody to care. We talk about caring this country often, but you can't care from a seated position. It requires you to stand up. It requires an action. You know, it
Yes.
requires you to a sacrifice. Actually, great caring
Yes.
requires great sacrifice. And so I needed somebody to come in my life to actually sacrifice something of theirs. My uncle left his three children and his wife on a Saturday morning, came across a bridge to another, from one state to another, to pick me up to take me to Saturday morning art class. But he
Oh, that's
also, what
beautiful.
he did was he realized that he said, I know you want to be an artist, but all the artists I know are very well read, very bright, very astute. And if you
Mm.
want to be an artist, you need to do this. And he gave me this thick book. It's a book of Modigliani, an Italian
Oh,
painter who painted these
yeah.
long women. And he said, I'm going to ask you a question at the end of the month, and I'm struggling through this book. I didn't want to disappoint him, but
Yeah.
I had answers. So next
Yeah.
month he gave me a new book: Picasso, Renoir, Cezanne,
Oh, wow.
Tanner, so on and so forth.
Wow.
And I was running out of the house on my own to the library to try to find a book that would stump him because I was now
Ah,
caught. I
that's
was
awesome.
hooked, you
That's
know.
amazing.
And
Yeah.
so this, what we're talking about, is helping
Yeah.
children, giving them these books and this access.
Yeah.
Children, children empower themselves. We don't
Yes.
empower children. Children empower
That's true.
themselves. But what we do
Yeah.
is we give them the tools to do so, to help them in
Exactly.
that endeavor. And
They
a
have
book,
they
what
they
better
have to be
tool?
given
What
something,
better
right? Yeah.
tool? What better tool
Yeah.
to give a child than a book?
I
You know,
agree. Yeah. Yeah,
what
and
better tool?
especially well, the thing about our book also and Corkins Creek books, it's also showing them we can make a difference. We can do something. We do not have to accept the circumstances that we live in. This is such an important thing too. If you're raised where you're just this is how it is and that's it, right? Like they need to see our book shows them, okay, this I mean, Butler says, no, I'm not going to do what you said. Then George Scott, this is a guy who, what a guy, okay? This is your beautiful painting of George Scott. Now, we don't have an actual we don't have one picture of George Scott. So this is based
That's
on
my
a man,
nephew.
another
That's
man.
that's my
Yeah,
nephew I use as a model.
that's awesome. That's
Yes,
awesome. Yeah, and
my nephew Avery.
you use the, let me see, the where's the
Well, as we
picture?
talked about, as I mentioned earlier, that when I do books, I actually go to the source.
I think that's
Wherever the
amazing.
source is. And so
Here's
I
the
went in this case. Yes,
this was the example that you had, right?
that's the example that I had.
Wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
See,
what I
this
use.
was a
That's not
man
George
who,
Scott.
this was another
Yeah,
contraband man. We don't have a picture of George Scott, so this is the one
I
that
use him
you
as
used.
reference. Yes, I use him
Yeah.
as my basically my model to model my model after. So I
Yeah.
knew how to dress and what they would look like. Apparently, what they would look
Yeah.
like, being contraband, coming up with no clothing, with just rags,
Yeah.
and the way they would have presented themselves. And I then went to the fort and I took my models, and so
Mm.
we went
Wow.
there and we basically did the photo shoot. It's for me, it's like doing a small film, a short film, and I
Yeah, I
go
can see
with
that.
my
Yeah.
yeah, I go with it, and it's all
Yeah.
cinematic for me. And I go and I set
Yeah.
my models up. I dress them in their in the costumes and the clothing of the period,
Wow.
and I have conversation with them that this is who you are now. You're posing, you're acting. This is what's happening. This is 18 whatever what year was that?
That's a good question. 1861, right?
1861. This is
I think so.
1861 at this fort, and these are
Yeah.
soldiers here there and letting us in, and I set that all up, and
Yeah.
photographed it, and that's
Wow.
what's presented in the book.
That's amazing.
So I do that for
Yeah.
every book. I will go to whatever country. If I'm working on a
Wow.
book in Ethiopia, I get on a plane and I go to Ethiopia, Madagascar,
Wow.
Israel. I got a book coming out
Wow.
now on Israel. And I went to Israel to do the research, a book on a sparrow living in the Western Wall. I wanted to see
Amazing.
what that was like, and whether or not a sparrow actually
Yeah.
lives in the Western Wall. Yeah, so I will go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in my case, I mean, I sort of did it the opposite, I guess, because I went to the place and then the story gave itself to me. By the time I left that fort that day, I was on the phone with Carolyn. I'm like, I know what I have to write. I know. Like, it was amazing. I was like, that woman was right. My friend. Um, but George Scott, by accident I found him. I didn't have him at the end of that day. I had
Uh-huh.
those three men. The problem with them was that there's no record of what happened to them. They know they were there. They were in the fort, but nobody knows what happened because the people, the Confederate people, to this day, they are trying to not let the stories be known of the contraband people. They don't want their histories to be found. The man that actually works for the museum. I'm not gonna say his name because I don't know where it's legally, but he was actually fired because he was trying to find out the stories of the people of the contrabands.
Really?
And yes, so the whole, I don't know what happened. I
He
mean, I
was
know he
trying
was
to find
fired. And
information out for you? Was
what?
he was he trying to find information out for you for your research?
No, not necessarily
Yeah.
for me. Yeah, I mean, was partly for me, but it was also just to find it out because he's that kind of a guy. He really wanted he had already been delving when I met him, and then he was continuing, and he was so good at this too, and they dumped him, and it's awful because they don't want these stories to be told. They just want to bury that history. So I was at a loss when I went to write this. I'm like, well, how am I going to write about these guys when nobody knows what happened? They were nobody. They were there. They were safe, but that's not a story.
Yeah.
I need to know. So I started researching everything about that. Virginia, 1861. Da da da. I found a newspaper article from New York Times that talked about this guy George Scott, who he was the first black man to be armed in the Civil War. Okay, and it was because he was. I had to dig backwards again. I said, well, it must be something having to do with Fort Monroe because it was the right dates. So I had
Mhm.
to sort of piece it all together. And this involves just a lot of constant researching. Like, go back to Virginia, find out more. Library of Congress, any newspapers, any from the time. You have to find stuff from the time. General Butler wrote wrote an order that that George Scott is to have a gun, which was monumental. And nobody, again, people were not, they didn't want that, but they gave it to him. Why? Well, this man turned out to be the real hero in the story because the Confederates were planning on, well, it turns out they were going to starve out the fort because they couldn't get in it. So they were going to starve them out. And he went into the woods and was able to track the Confederates. He knew how to do that because he had been in the woods for 2 years. He had escaped from a horrible enslaver and lived on his own in the woods for 2 years and only came out when he started to hear whisperings of what Butler had done. So
Yeah.
then he finally felt safe and took a chance of going after he watched. That's the opening of our book. He's watching to make sure that it's not a trap, and he goes in and he says that he can help. So he actually volunteered his services. He didn't have to do that. He could have just tried to stay there safely, right? This is an amazing person, right? That actually he finally found safety and he went out and risked his life again. Like, wow,
What's
and he
interesting
went
is
there and he
what
found
I'm
out the
loving,
information. Hmm?
what I'm
What you
loving
say?
what you're saying here is that, and people need to understand that the amount of information that you sought after and found and put in this book makes these picture with these considered children's books. You know, they are a wonderful source of information. Because of how much research goes in, not only from your side as the author, but from the illustrator side. Because
Yeah,
then I go in and do an equal amount of research.
yeah,
So this little package, this little wonderful package that we call book, um, is so full of information that it's a great starting point for
yes,
someone who wants to go in and find out more information. Because at the back
yeah,
of it, we got the footnotes. We
hmm,
have all the information, the author's notes, and all that. And then research information of how to go out and find how to find out more information about this. All that's
yeah,
in that little package.
yeah, yeah,
So picture books are just a wonderful resource. It's an
yeah,
amazing resource. It's like
yeah.
it's even better than Cliff Note.
Oh, yeah. Well, Cliff Notes I have mixed feelings about. Yeah, I mean, if
Yeah,
you use them properly, they can help you as a springboard. But a lot of people just use them to cheat
yeah,
with. But yeah. But yeah, I know. And this is another thing that kind of makes me crazy. Okay. You and I know we don't make a hell of a lot of money from these things. It's like we do it for love more than anything else, right? But for God's
gotta
sake,
be.
I will go there. I will pour my whole heart out. Like, say I go to a reading in a bookstore and I'm not getting paid to go to this bookstore. I travel. I'll travel. I will take a plane. I don't do it anymore because it's really getting ridiculously expensive. But I will go out of town. I will go to a place. I will, with no compensation, talk to them. The kids fall in love with the book. They want the book. The parents say no. What are you
Yeah,
doing?
yeah,
This book was like what? It's under $20. But then you'll take your kid to Haagen Dazs and buy a ice cream cone that costs more than the book.
yeah.
How is that okay? What are we doing? I don't
Well,
get it.
it's again, it's about access, and giving kids opportunities to understand and help them empower themselves. And
It's
they
it's
don't understand.
vital.
Ice
Yeah.
cream, ice cream kills them. Sugar kills
Yeah,
them.
it does.
You know,
It
so
does.
you're
It
giving them
really
something
does. Yeah.
that actually, if you love your children, you would not give them ice cream. But
Agreed.
if you really love your children, you would take them to the bookstore, to the library,
Well, it's
you know,
kind of
and
mean to take the kid to the bookstore, let them meet the author, and then not let them have
have a
like
book.
it's. I mean, come on, the kid was so excited, like and you meet the author, you get his sign. This is something that could really change. I'm not saying it because I wrote it. I'm saying anybody. Okay, my
No,
life was changed when I found books that I loved, and I never got to meet authors. Okay,
no,
but
nor
but
did
when
I.
I found a book that I loved, that was the world to me.
Yeah,
And I have,
true.
but did it for myself. I mean, some kids, they're not lucky enough to get exposed to those books. I mean, the kid has to somehow be exposed to that book. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing about being a kid. You can't go out and search
Well,
for your own stuff.
no, true. And that's where we come in. That's where
Yeah.
that's what parenting is. And parenting, I think, the best gift that a parent can give a child is the ability to survive without them. That is the best gift you
That's
can
very
give.
good to say. Yeah. Yeah.
That is the best gift you can give a child, is the ability to survive without them. And
Yeah.
so all this, and we're rearing children. It's about giving them information, helping them in this to understand the world that they live in. both sides, because if you only put them in one scenario, they're going to be at a disadvantage when they get into a different scenario, a different part, a different dealing around individuals. I travel all over the world. And one of the things I do is I love going and understanding the culture. I go in not to introduce my culture to this. I go there to get from. I want to
Yeah.
understand your culture, and I'm going to go there and I'm going to be very respectful of your culture.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very open minded. I'm going to go and and go in to see and say, oh, this is how you do it. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. I love it, and it's similar to what I'm familiar with, but there's some things that are not. I'm not familiar at all.
Yes.
That adds to my growth, and those are
Yes.
the things that I share, and those are the things that end up in my books because this is information that I hold. That's what artists do. We sit out on a peripheral, and we're in
Yeah.
constant observation of the world. That's what an artist does,
Yeah.
and we're documenting. We're
Hmm.
documenting
That's a good
information,
word. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not only not. So I want to be clear to the audience. When I say artists, I'm not talking about the visual artists. I'm talking about the filmmakers. I'm talking about the musicians. I'm talking about the dancers.
Everybody. Yeah.
All
Creatives.
those
All
individuals,
creatives.
seven arts,
Yeah.
seven hands, two
Yes.
fingers, just seven arts.
Yeah, that's right.
Seven arts. I had to get seven, two
Yes.
fingers. Okay, the seven arts. I'm talking about the seven arts. That is where
Yeah.
we. That's that's our purpose in life as
Yes.
artists. To give to bring it in and to
Yes.
regurgitate it out, to share and say this is what it
So true.
looks like. This is what you should pay attention
Yeah.
to, which makes us very dangerous in the society. The artists. I
Mm.
mean, and when I say that is because if you look through antiquity, whenever there was an overthrow of power, a coup d'état, I don't care, Nazi Germany, Communist China, Russia, Cuba, Spain, wherever there was an overthrow of power, the first people that they came after were the artists to utterly
Yeah.
destroy them. You know, you come after the artists
Yeah.
because what we do is we open the brain, we open the minds, we get people to think and ask questions. That's
Right.
not that's not a good
That is a
thing.
threat. No,
That's
that's
not
a
a good
big
thing
threat.
when
Yeah.
you're trying to dupe the audience. When you're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. You don't want somebody out there saying, don't look over there. I need you to look over here.
So
This is what
true.
they're trying to do to you. And I'm showing you that.
Yes.
And so that's what makes us dangerous, and that's what makes us important in a society.
Yeah.
And then and so your children, if they have that inclination to say, I want to be an artist, that's what they're telling you. That there's something inside them that says, I want to be that person that leads that. This is the best way to say it. James Baldwin, when he passed away, his brother was asked, um, what do you think James would have said about his legacy? And oh, Jimmy spoke of it often. He said, when they sift through the wreckage and they brush away the detritus, hopefully they will uncover something that I left behind, something that somebody else can use.
Yeah.
That is what this is about. To
It really
leave
is.
something behind that somebody else can use. You know, and so
Absolutely.
I want to leave it behind, but I also want to leave it and what I'm doing now is creating these books with your aid, your great stories, to be able to work with that audience, or work with that author, to create this body of work that we put out now, so they can be used and teach and provide this awakening, you know,
Yeah.
this information,
Exactly.
you know, to the young people and to those who pick it up. I don't, and young and old, it doesn't matter to
Yeah.
me. I
I
just
know
want,
that kind of annoys me too. Like, I think our books are great for everybody. I mean, this book teaches you so much. It's I just think and I'm not again not saying because I wrote it. I just think I mean, I give a ton of them away. I want people to read the book because
yeah,
it's so much information for everybody. It's what you said. It's an awakening. I love that. A book is an awakening. That's a great slogan, right? And everybody deserves that. And you're never too late for an awakening, right? You're
never.
never too late. And I
We talk
think
about being
picture
woke all
books
the
are
time in the
easier to
society
sell.
now. This is a force, a form of awakening. This is a great this is a great um, um, device, you know, to begin your
Yeah.
awakening. This is a great tool, and I'm glad. I'm so glad
Yeah.
to be a
See,
part
I
of
think
it.
it's wonderful to have awakening with your child together to learn something new.
Yeah,
That's beautiful too. And that's
yeah.
something that's going to stay with a child. They're going to remember that time that they read a book with their parent and they both learned something. That's an
Oh,
amazing thing, you know?
that is so true. I mean, we have to be very careful. I tell teachers because I am at the by the I'm, I'm still teaching. I've been teaching now for 38, 39 years.
Wow. Wow. I
I'll
didn't
be
know that.
70,
Wow.
I'll be 70 next year. I'll be 70. But
Oh,
um, what I do is, and I teach teachers, and so one of the things that I let teachers understand is that one, kids can read you from the moment you walk in the door. You
sure.
know, they can tell whether or not you like children, whether or not you're interested in your job, you love your job, the whole nine. They read that from the moment. You cannot hide that from. They're so insightful.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that we have to understand that what comes out of our mouths, you have to be very careful because children will take that as gospel. And it can
Right.
destroy a child if you say the wrong thing. It might be just something that you just say and not even really think about how harmful it was that you said it, but can actually
Yeah.
destroy a child's
I
path.
know.
You
So
know,
true.
and so true with the fact that you can say something very positive to a child. And I said, I gave them the scenario. I said, you've retired now. You're in your neighborhood, and this is a neighborhood you used to teach in, and you've been out of the system for a while, and you're in the shop in the supermarket, and somebody comes along and says, "Mrs. Burkle, yeah, yeah, you might not remember me, but I'm Johnny. I had you as a fifth grade teacher. You're my fifth grade teacher,
Yeah.
and God, I'm so glad I ran into you because something you said to me." I'm a psychologist now, whatever, I'm a
Yeah.
teacher, whatever. Something you said to me changed my whole path of my life,
Yeah. Isn't that
and, I,
beautiful?
and it's like,
Yeah.
and when we hear those stories, we
Mhm.
go to tears, you know, because
Absolutely.
we understand that those little things that you might not be aware at the
Yeah.
time you said to a child, it is everything.
I know. I know. And they do. They remember, there's that quote, we don't remember days, we remember moments. And those
Yes.
moments, it's so important. I mean, I had my teacher in 11th grade, she taught us Macbeth and she had us memorize the tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow speech, but she made us do it like not just recite it, but really own it. And I just something about Shakespeare just really hit me. Like not the first when I read Romeo and Juliet, the teacher was not so great, and I was like, whatever. But then when I
Yep.
read Macbeth, this woman changed my life
Yeah.
by caring enough. They like not just okay, we're gonna recite it or whatever. She really showed me the heart of humanity in Macbeth. Like really, everything is in Macbeth. I mean, everything is in
That's
Macbeth, right?
really important. I think what you just said there is very interesting and very um, powerful because the teacher does make the difference and the types of teachers. So I think who should be teaching are those individuals who are teaching because it is their life study, meaning that
Yeah,
who should be teaching math is somebody who loves math, who loves numbers.
absolutely,
Not somebody who doesn't go to school to learn to become a math teacher. Somebody who actually loves math. Somebody who
exactly.
loves somebody who loves literature, and have
Yeah,
that person become your reading teacher.
yeah. Because it's
Your language
contagious. Their
arts
love
teacher.
is contagious, and the
It's
kids get it.
contagious.
Yeah,
It becomes infectious.
absolutely. I
You
know.
can't. You just
I know.
That teacher there just changes your life. You know,
I know.
those are the individuals who should be teaching the children, not those who go
Yeah.
there because it's a path. They said, I didn't know what else to do, so I ended up becoming a teacher.
I know. It's so true.
You know,
I know.
you don't want those
That's why
individuals in the
I can't be a
classroom.
teacher. I could be a teacher if I could just talk about like the things, my specific passion, writing and this and that.
Right,
But I mean, I guess I can do that in college level, but I tried, but I don't know. Somehow I don't ever, that doesn't work out for me. I do teach privately, but
right.
I'm not the kind of person that can just go in there and teach all subjects because I have to have that. I don't have that passion for all of them.
That's why
Yeah.
I'm still teaching because I love what I do. I
Yeah. I do
absolutely,
teach
I
writing
absolutely
privately to
love what
people,
I
but
do.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when I come into the classroom, my students are they feel it. They feel the passion that they have,
Yeah.
and they
That's the
want and
number
that's
one thing a teacher needs is the passion. Absolutely. Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
an
and I think
ingredient.
I wonder if I would have loved math if I'd had a passion. I doubt it though. I
Yeah,
can't
yes,
stand math.
that's true. You probably would have if you
I
had
don't
someone,
know.
but they know how
I
to
don't
break
like
it down to this. And whether put it this way, whether that you end up becoming a math, teacher or whatever, a mathematician,
you know
that's
what
one
it is
thing.
about
Having,
math?
would have a better appreciation.
Math is too absolute. It's like, 2 plus 2 equals 4. I don't want that. I like writing where there's so many possibilities. You can tell a story so many different ways, right? You can
But a
find so,
mathematician
you know what I mean? Like,
a
that's what I like.
mathematician would challenge 1 plus 1 equals 2.
It's a
He would
challenge.
give he would challenge that. Yeah, a mathematician would
Yeah.
challenge that.
Really?
Yes.
How
Yes.
can you challenge that? Isn't it
Because
absolute?
because there are other ideas and Einstein questioned 1 plus 1.
He did?
Because
Well, that's
there's an
interesting. I didn't know
infinite
that.
amount of how we understand. We use 1 plus 1 because that's all that it makes it easiest to makes it
Hmm.
it's not complex. So
Well, I would be
it's
interested
not
in. See, no one ever
complicated.
said this to
So it
me
helps us
before. Yeah.
understand, you know,
Wow.
our world. That's why we have a clock, because we
Yeah.
need time to understand the world. And it's those
Yeah.
components are there only because it helps us
Yeah.
understand the world
Right. And the
in a world
calendars have
that's
changed. Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah. Which is
But
so
one
interesting.
plus one
Remember
does
when all
not
the people,
necessarily 1 plus 1 does not actually equals
okay, well,
2.
you know what? You should be a math teacher because I find that very
No,
interesting.
I'm a student of the world, and I love learning, and that's why I travel. I
Yeah.
have an intrepid spirit. I mean, an intrepid spirit. I have an
Yeah, me
offensive.
too.
I have an intrepid spirit, and
Yeah.
my and which means that I know I'm a student of the world, and I want to learn.
Yeah.
I'm at this juncture in my life right now, and as an artist, is that I don't know anything, you know, and so
Right.
I go to my studio and I go in, and it's like the first time I've been at this place in this position, in my studio. But that white piece of
Yeah.
paper still gives me
Yeah.
angst. Still gives me, I'm still,
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's
this energy,
exactly it. The
that blank
beginning
paper,
again.
man.
Yeah.
I'm going to,
Yeah.
one of the things that's very important for children is to know that no matter where you are in that, that path of where you are in terms of learning, is that
Yeah.
it is always, you know, don't be afraid of making a mistake. So I go in knowing that the
Yes.
possibility of making a mistake is there, but I want to.
Hmm.
I'm not afraid to make it because I'm going to learn something from the mistake, and so that's going to
Right.
take
That's
me to the
right.
next level. We in this society,
Yeah.
we have, unfortunately, again, back at our educational system, we teach children, we're directing our kids not to make the mistake. We chastise them for making a
You're right.
mistake. That is the
Yeah.
foolish thing, the most foolish thing you can actually
I
have in a
agree.
family is to have a
Right.
child be afraid to make the mistake because no one has ever learned
Yeah.
anything
They'll just be
it's
frozen and they won't
you
want to do
learn from
anything.
the
Yeah.
mistake. You learn
Yep.
from the
You're so
mistake.
right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
make them. Thelonious Monk
Embrace
said,
the
I
mistake.
heard
Yeah.
you make that sound.
Yeah.
I heard you make that bad note. Next time you make it loud so you don't make it again.
Yeah. I like that.
Make
Yeah.
that mistake. Don't
You're
be afraid.
so right. I mean, yeah, it's funny you were talking about not knowing anything. Well, when I was doing my podcast, I did all this. I always do research even for the podcast. It's never fun, but I did this. It was about critical thinking. So Socrates was really the one that talked about critical thinking first. So what did
That's
they
right.
do? They killed him, right? And so, but he said the one thing I know is that I don't know anything. I know
I don't
nothing.
know anything.
Like that's
That's right.
it. You know. But they don't want us to think like that. And then with
No,
all the
on that premise,
Socratic
man,
questioning,
on that premise that you don't know anything means that you're going to be in, in, in you're going to be in that moment of constant openness. You're going to be in a constant
Yeah.
quest for knowledge, the constant quest for information. Because if you think that you don't
Yeah.
know it, well, I don't want to be in a place of not knowing, but I know that I
Right.
don't know. And the things that I
Right.
do know, how much do I really know them? Because there's many
Exactly.
times I've thought that I've known and I had the answer, and then it required several years later. Then I realized, oh. damn, I was wrong.
Exactly. I
I was
know.
so, and
Yeah.
so from
But
that
you know
premise,
what?
I
That's
realized
what life is all
I
about.
don't
I
really
mean,
know anything.
yeah,
And then when it's been given to me, it's been given to me from somebody else. The information is
exactly.
so that information now I got to question that information because it was given to me.
It's a right.
You know,
Life is a big puzzle to put together, and there's so many different ways. But that's what makes it kind of. I mean, what is life without not knowing? Because if we knew everything, it would be so boring.
wonderful.
What would even be the
It
point?
makes it
You know?
wonderful. It makes it wonderful
Yeah.
that not knowing. It makes it wonderful that I don't know. I don't know your world. I don't know the
Yes.
world that you live in. It
Exactly.
makes it wonderful that that you look different than I do, and so that means there's things that it's going to be. Then when you go home, you sit down at a table that's going to have a different type of food on your plate than I will, and I want to know what that tastes like. Tell me,
Exactly.
teach me. I
Yeah.
want to know what your food tastes like. I want to know the experiences that you have. I want to know the stories that are told in your house.
Exactly.
The stories that you grew up with. I want to know those stories, and I want you to know mine. And let's go now. Let's go to the neighbor and say, "Hey, tell us a story. Tell me a
Yeah.
story."
I know.
You
I
know,
wish it could be like that. I don't. I don't understand what's happening. Well, I think it's like you said. It's there's
fear.
something going on here where they
Fear
don't
is
want
what's
us to have.
happening. Fear
Yeah.
is what's
Yeah.
happening. You know,
Yeah.
fear of information, fear of
Fear of information.
ideas. Yeah,
Yeah.
fear of ideas.
Yeah.
We don't want you to have those ideas. I'm going to eliminate the ideas. Those ideas
Yeah.
didn't exist. They never existed. They were this. That was a figment of somebody's imagination. It didn't really happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we know it's a lie.
Yeah.
But most of there's unfortunately, as I said, those individuals who are not critical thinkers don't know. They believe it's the truth. They believe that someone can
Yeah.
say it never happened. That the world is flat. Yes,
And
and
what
they're
is that?
questioning and the world and there are people who question it because they've never been on a plane. They've never been outside their backyard. They've never been outside their neighborhood. The majority of
Yeah.
people that in this country have never. I did the research on this and because
Really?
I think I was in Portugal somewhere. I don't remember where. I mean, I travel all over the place, but I was somewhere, and my girlfriend said, those people over there, those are Americans. I said, oh, they're Americans. So yeah, no, they are, and we travel a lot. I said, I don't think you think. I think you think Americans travel as much more than you think they do. I
Hmm.
don't think they travel as much as that. I'm going to do some research on that, and we have our laptop, our phone, and I pulled it up and I
Yeah.
when I googled it, and I said, okay, and I found out that 10% of our population has passports.
Mhm.
Only 10%
You're
of six.
kidding.
Yes, and only 6%
Oh,
actually
wow.
use. Only
Oh my
six
gosh, I
percent
didn't know
of
that.
those use them. So we're not
Wow.
travelers. We travel within our
I had no
country,
idea that
but we
low.
don't travel
Wow.
outside of because of the fear of the unknowing.
Hmm.
I don't want to go
Terrible.
out into a place that I don't know the language. How am I going to navigate and I can't speak the language,
It's so
or I don't
easy
know the
these days
food?
with the phone. Couldn't be
It's
any
so
easier
easy
than
these
to
days
travel.
without the phone. You don't need the phone. You just show up. I was
Well, I
traveling
yes,
before
I
the
agree.
phone.
I've been
You
I
show up,
agree, but
you show up
there's a
open,
good
and you
argument
can
though.
go there with the affect, a positive affect, and they go and they're like,
Yeah.
okay. You learn some words before you go. You do your homework, know how to say good
Yeah.
morning, good afternoon,
Yeah,
thank you, no
yeah.
thank you, they're polite, and then you go out. And with that, armed with that, and you go out and you
Yes.
find that people are open like flowers once they see that you're trying to you're
Yeah.
respectful because you're open with my greeting. And
Right.
now, and you say thank you and merci, beaucoup, merci, merci. And
Yeah.
then that
You're right.
allows
Yeah.
you to say, okay, you're not coming here with that attitude that
Attitude that
you
you're
are the center
superior.
of the world,
Yeah.
that you're the center of the universe.
It's
You know,
funny that that's exactly what happened when Lafayette came here. They were so sick of all the foreigners coming because all these foreigners were acting superior. Like they didn't want to know about America. They just wanted to like control, like teach them. But
yeah,
Lafayette came with the whole idea, like I'm here to learn from you. I'm here to to help you, but not to not to take charge. And he was so respectful, and he had learned some English. So exactly what you're saying is the truth. You know,
yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand people at all.
I take people now that have never been. Actually, this month I'm taking a group that have never been out of the country, and they've always wanted to
Really?
see Paris. Yeah, they always wanted to see Paris.
Wow.
So
That's
I'm taking them to
amazing.
Paris for to show them Paris. Paris for me
That's
is
so
like
nice.
I
I
know
love
Paris.
Paris. Yeah.
I know it like the back of my hand,
Yeah.
and so I'm going to show them Paris. And
Yeah.
then I
Oh,
take
that's
people all
great.
over the world. I've taken them
Wow.
to all over Europe. I've taken them to um, places to like Ethiopia. I mean, not Ethiopia. Somebody, I
Yeah.
didn't go to Ethiopia. Somebody did somebody with Ethiopia, but we went together. Both of us went to
Hmm.
explore that together. But to Israel, so I
Wow.
will put pieces on these people on these journeys.
Amazing.
Morocco, I will take them
Mm.
on these journeys to show them, to introduce them to the world, to show them that
Yeah.
when afraid of this, something was all in your head.
Exactly.
It's
It's
all in
so
your head.
true.
It's all in
I
your head.
never thought it was so low about the people traveling. That's crazy. What is going on?
Book allows you to do. It allows you to travel
It
without
does.
without leaving your
And
comfortable chair.
in
You
time,
know,
in our case, travel in time
in
besides
time.
place.
Yeah,
You'll go
yeah.
back to another time and learn a very important time. I want to show this. Okay, here is your art is so spectacular. Look at this. This is George Scott when he's. Can you see this?
Yeah,
This
pull it
George
back. Yeah,
Scott when
yeah,
he's scouting out.
yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Look
That's
at that.
those are
Look
my
at
those
that.
are my night scenes. I love
It's
those night scenes.
amazing. There's so much in this without saying anything. I feel so much emotion just by looking at this. And this is such a lesson for young people too. How much you can learn just by looking at something and they can critical thinking, they can think about what's going on here, right? That's
Yes.
critical thinking, them examining this. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. And then you have made a battle scene beautiful. Look at this. Okay. This is gorgeous. Okay, and then here. Wait,
You got to pull
hold
it
on.
back. You got to pull it back. You got to.
Okay, pull it
Oh
back. All
yeah,
right. Okay, look at
because
that.
it got glare. It's glare on it. But yeah,
I know it's terrible.
yeah,
There. Is that better? Look at that.
yeah.
This we could study this. Like it's you have made a battle beautiful. Like you have shown the beauty in battle. Like the it's
Of
like
the
there
horror.
it's like
It's a very
but the
horror.
horror but the
horror.
heart the the horror, the beauty in horror, I guess. I mean, it's a weird thing to say, okay?
Yeah.
It's like poetry in motion as horror is happening. It's you're also showing the people's dedication to what they're doing, like their determination. You have brought whatever it is, it's something for young people to
Well,
consider
it's still part of
themselves.
humanity.
It's not for
Even the war is part of humanity, unfortunately, but it is part of humanity. And then there are people there who are sacrificing life for something they believe in. Yeah, yeah. And there's
just feel it like when someone just says there was this battle, right? Nobody cares, like because it's just whatever. But when you look at the humanity involved in it, that is eye opening.
Well, that's
That
why
makes
you,
us
for
think.
me, when there's ways of doing it where you don't show faces and things like that, and then that takes the
Yeah.
humanity away from it. So, but when you put a face in and a color and what have you, so then it becomes that person does not become a dot; it becomes a person.
Yes.
And there are
Exactly.
what's what's inside us, what's innate inside us, can relate to that individual that they see and go, "Oh, that's
Yes.
a person. That's not a roach."
Yes.
It's not a mark of
Yes.
paper. That's an individual that is there in that circumstance in that situation. And we can relate in some sense, or we can
Yes.
have empathy towards that situation. And that's where, for me, that's the art.
Empathy
That's the
is
art
so
in it.
key. It really is. Empathy is a real. I don't know. We're sorely missing it these days. And so I'm happy to say that I think we are trying. I think young people are the key, and I think that we are helping wake up empathy. I don't think empathy ever disappears. I think it has to be woken up. Woken up. I don't.
I
Like I
think,
said, I don't think
I mean,
anybody's born.
it's strange to say, but I think there's some truth in it. What's happening in our country right now is very necessary. Unfortunately, but it's necessary because we talk about
Really?
going back to awakening. Going back to
Yeah.
people understanding that we become lulled to sleep. We've
Yes,
become
that's true.
complacent and we've been lulled to sleep. And now we have to realize that things that are said to us, the things that we say matter, things that we
Yes.
care about matter. And if you don't care about it, if you take this cursory position and say, I only care about this. I only care about,
Yeah.
how much my gas costs, you know, or I only care about, the cost of eggs. Then
Yeah.
you find yourself at this point where, it's like it's about itself. Now we're in a position to realize
Yeah.
this is affecting the nation, what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think it's a necessary, unfortunately, it's a necessary evil, but I think it is necessary and we have to go through it. It's the yin and yang of the universe. You can't have one without the other.
Okay.
You have to, in order to have peace, you have to have war. In order to have joy, you have
That's
to have
interesting.
pain.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah.
we want to have a world that is, the pageants, the Miss American pageant. She gets up and she says, "I want world peace." It's never going to
Yeah.
happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it
And she
can't.
has no
It's
concept of, yeah.
um, who was it? It
Yeah.
was Yogi Berra said, if the world was perfect, then it wouldn't be.
That's funny. That's true.
Yeah. If
I
the
didn't know you
world was
said that.
perfect, then it wouldn't
Yeah.
be, because
Yeah.
it requires that constant push and pull, requires it. The country
Okay.
requires it. The nation requires it. The universe requires it. For us to really
Okay.
appreciate sunshine, we have to have rain.
Well, that's what I say to people about when they complain about the cold weather. I'm like, yeah, but if we didn't have winter, we wouldn't appreciate spring. That's what I always say. You know?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to have it. And so
But
this is an
what
unfortunate,
about learning?
it's necessary. It's a necessary evil, but it's really unnecessary that we have to do it through this way. But in some sense, it is. It's a healthy government. The government it's important that it's said it's in the government that it's important that we have these controversies. You know,
Okay.
because it brings about change. You know, and again, it
I
brings
all
about
right.
an awakeness. I mean, it's hard to say, but if you look at the world, and I look at the universe in a different manner, I look at the big picture. As an artist, always look at the big picture. I'm always looking at not the little minute things. I look at those too because those are important and very beautiful. But at the same time, I need to look at the bigger scope and seeing in that
Right.
bigger scope. What does this mean? What does this say? What's happening really? you know and
Right.
what does this show the world, or our little look at the timeline of humanity. I mean, of man on earth. If you look at that timeline, we're only a dot
Yeah.
in that line. We're a
That's right.
blink.
Yeah.
So what is happening
Yeah.
here really is like just a moment in time, in that big
That's
time.
true. Very true. That's
You
very
know,
true.
so what is it that
Yeah.
we are going? What is the importance of us? What is that going to? What
Right.
is that going to say in history that what we did here? Did we
Yeah.
fight and hate each other? What was it? Was it a coming together? Was it an understanding? What was there? Peace? Was it love? What was it? Confusion? What was happening in that little moment when they investigated? They go back and research that little moment
Yeah.
in time.
Right.
You
Right.
know, what role did you play? How did
That's
you
right.
What was did you bring
Yeah.
evil to that entity, that element, or what was your role in that?
Exactly. Exactly. And why did you choose this role? That's the question too.
Well,
That's the critical thinking. That's like, why am I doing what I do? Am I just, what are my reasons for this, And it's, but I think not only are we showing people another way of life, but it's another time in our own country, and we're calling to task things that some people would prefer never not to be known. Okay,
yeah,
to show, okay, America's not perfect.
no,
It's not
it's
perfect, but like you were saying, we overcome this. So it's part of our bad things happen, but why don't, and we need to talk about
I
that. We need
believe
to talk about
about it is that what you're doing is you have said, "I this didn't happen," and it did, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an even more evil
it. Yeah,
detriment, because I'm going to discover it. I'm going to this I'm going to be deceitful. I'm going to hide it. I'm going to act that it didn't exist.
Yeah.
instead of taking the high road. The high road says, you know what, this is something that we did,
Yes.
and we're human. This is something we did out
Yes.
of our humanity that we didn't understand. Humanity, we didn't understand these people. We took advantage of this group or whatever. But
Yeah.
now this is a time for healing. This is a
Yeah.
time um, for us to now say, I'm going to now help in the growth of that. I'm going to help move forward. So
Yeah.
let's understand. Let's take this and say this is what we've done, but this is what we're doing now to
Yes.
mend that, to heal that. You know,
Absolutely. And
to,
I'm
to
gonna give out. I think Virginia has been really amazing, actually, in embracing the mistakes that have been made in history. But then the good, the positive. I mean, after all, this happened in Virginia, and you could. There's two ways they could look at it. They could look at it like, let's hide this and go back to being Confederates, or let's talk about the great stuff that happened here. And they really are embracing this book. I mean, this book won the Virginia Readers' Choice Award, and so they shared it with young readers, and young readers chose this book. That's beautiful. That means Virginia is into us, right? They're on the right side of history, in my opinion.
yeah,
They're showing, okay, we weren't perfect at the time, but look, this happened here, and we are proud that it happened here, and we are proud to be part of the good, which I
yeah,
love.
yeah,
I really, when I've been to Virginia many times speaking, and they're always embracing me, and you never know what you're going to get sometimes, but they love it,
yeah.
and I'm really really proud of Virginia. They're taking down the wrong statues, they're doing good stuff. So
Good
I'm going
stuff.
to give them applaud. I'm going to applaud them. Virginia's a
Well, you applaud
interesting
when that
state,
good.
right?
You applaud good doing. You know, you good. You
I
do.
do
You
applaud
applaud
it.
that.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I hope
Yeah.
young readers, I think, are getting our book there, but I think that young readers, just in general, it doesn't. Yes, Virginia, they should get it because it happened there, but we should also know about the whole. Everybody should know about it, not just because it happened there. It happened. We should just know it because
Yeah.
it's not just about what happened right here. It's about we need to know about humanity, all of humanity. It
Well,
all
it's
ties
also
together.
good. It brings light to the falsehoods. You know, the things that
Yes.
we like you were led to believe, like Lincoln being, the
Oh,
great savior, the great white savior.
yeah.
We need to understand where his position was. Um, what was his position?
Yeah. Yeah.
That we have to understand and come into some grips that take account and to understand that these things have been told and these were mistruths, these were untruths. But there are
Yeah.
truths out there. There's truth if you seek it. There's some real truth out there to find, and then it will help you in yet that position, that place where you're trying to get to. To
Yes.
arm yourself with truth. There's no more powerful position.
Yes.
To arm yourself with truth, because then you can go in and you can defeat a lot of things that come at you when you're armed with truth. And then, so
Yes.
it's very, very powerful. And then again, back to our children. What is the most precious thing that you can give a child is the ability to survive without you. And these are the ways
Yeah.
that you do
That's
that.
profound. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I want to bring up. I'll talk a little. Like, first, I want to show you a picture of George Scott. This is so powerful. He's going to the Capitol. This is the last moment. This is the last moment we know about George Scott, and this reminds me of your other book, that we were talking about before, the book about the poet Whitman. You had the same. Remember the Capitol? You had the Capitol.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's so
Walt
interesting
Whitman.
because the Capitol was in the middle of being built, and it's kind of a metaphor for everything.
Yeah, yeah,
I remember in that book it was like it didn't look like we didn't know if it was going up or coming down. It's kind of the same thing. George Scott, we really don't know what happened to this man. It's
mhm,
like what? So I think that's a bit of critical thinking for young readers too. They could wonder, they could think about that. I think it's so important to encourage everybody, but especially young people, Okay, maybe you don't know the absolute answer, but it doesn't stop you from thinking about it and wonder, let's have some critical thinking about this. Critical thinking really is so important.
It
It's so
everything.
interesting that you brought it up, and I've been thinking about it so much. I mean, it's just in oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this has to go on. So, but I think when people discuss this book, it's an easy way to promote critical thinking. When you start asking questions, what do you think about this? What do you think? Anytime when there's a story where we don't have all the answers, great time to have critical thinking for kids. Well, what do you think? Da da da. We can really start having them think, and then they can do their. Hopefully, they will start questioning and
It
doing
makes
more. They'll be interested enough to find out
it
more.
makes for a very powerful classroom experience. When you
Yeah.
have that dialogue of, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts? I'm going to give you, this is some of the things that have been uncovered through research. We found this to be true. And then these were the lies that were told. And so now
Yeah.
we show both sides. Okay, so now where is the
Yeah.
middle? What's the middle ground of this? Where is the truth? What do you think happened? Where does it where
Yeah.
what do you think happened? They didn't have that dialogue, that debate, you know. That
Yeah.
debate is wonderful, because we're going to learn from children at
It's
that
so
level.
important.
It's so
Yeah.
important to have that debate. Then you come
Yeah.
home and have that conversation with mom. And most times when kids coming home, hopefully the parents are open enough to have the debate,
Yeah.
because sometimes we'll be shut off. No, that's a lie. Somebody who told you that? I'm going to go to the school and have them.
Yes, that's
I'm
our
going to have
portion.
them. I'm going to
Yeah.
have them locked up. I'm going to have that teacher locked up for
Yeah,
telling
yeah.
that mistruth.
It's crazy,
And
right? It's
unfortunately, they
crazy.
go in and then have these, the teachers taken out of the school, out of the program, whatever, because of something that they didn't do
Yeah.
any research on, but because they felt that
Right.
it's that truth is going to be detrimental to their child some way. How can you ever believe that truth is going to actually be detrimental? You know, it just boggles the mind.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's true, but I think well, this is a case where young people maybe can help their parents learn. I don't know. I hope so. But and I know we've been talking a long time, but I want to just say what this is an interesting thing too about what people don't understand, how people misinterpret people. Where is he? Here's Benjamin Butler. This
Mhm.
is the guy that made the contraband decision. If they ever make a movie or a book of our book, they'll probably make it like Brad Pitt or something, somebody. But the thing about Benjamin Butler, he's so he has such a bad conception in history because later on, okay, they got rid of him after the contraband decision out of Fort Monroe. They didn't because they were angry that he did this. Like get
Mhm.
lost. They sent him to command New Orleans. Now New Orleans had just been taken. They were taken so the Union took it from the Confederates, but New Orleans was Confederate. So he was in charge of all these people that friggin' hated him, right? And so his men, the he could punish any men that did anything to the Union soldiers, but he couldn't punish the women, right? So women used to go and beat like they weren't killing them, but they were assaulting these men. They were spitting on them. They were always attacking the Union soldiers. So he started calling them he started implying they were like ladies of the night or something. He did something. So of course everybody hated that. He was just trying to get his men to not be harassed by these women and beaten. And then somebody killed a black man and he had that person put to death for killing the black man. So once he had a white man put to death for killing a black man, they they put a price on his head. They wanted to kill him, and that is the now that is the thing that they used to call him Beast Butler. They still call him that. Why? Because we hear, oh, he was a beast. He did this, but you don't understand that he was in charge of people that hated him, and he was trying to do the right thing by making someone be punished for putting someone to death. And that's why we don't look at the reason why they call people something. We just say they're that. It's such an important lesson in history to know who's saying these things and why did they say it.
Yeah.
It's not fair. This man was just
Imagine,
doing the right
imagine
thing.
imagine how we're going to be viewed. What's going on now in our country? Years from now,
Yeah,
about what was the commentary, what was the discussion and the arguments, and the ideas behind what we led to all this. Where we are now.
yeah,
What was the conversation? And it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to play out in from
It will
years
be.
ahead.
It will be interesting. Yeah.
It'll be very interesting, because
Especially how
there's
young,
so
I
much
think,
negative
again, how
information.
young people view it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's, we live in a crazy time, but I will say, I think we're doing good. You know, when you say we're doing well, but we're doing good because we're doing good things for the world. And,
yeah.
and
I
that's all
like to
we can
believe
do. We
so.
can just do,
I like to believe
I
so. I
think
mean,
so. Yeah.
my heart. I think if your heart's in the right place, if you believe your heart's in the right place,
Yeah. Well, we're doing it because we
yes,
want to help. We're not
I think
doing it for,
you know.
yeah.
I
We're
think
not
I'm doing.
greedy.
I'm
We're
not.
doing it to
I'm
help.
personally, I'm not doing anything to hurt anyone. I'm not trying to.
Exactly.
I'm not bringing, especially in my books. I'm not going to. I'm not going to pick up a book and do spend a large part of my life, and or year, how long it takes me to do a book, in something that is going to
Yeah.
be detrimental or something that's going to
No.
be evil or something that is not going to be positive. I'm not going to spend my life
Right.
towards that, in that
No.
endeavor.
Of course
Doesn't
not.
make
Yeah.
sense. I'm
Well,
just, I'm,
we're
I'm
like
just
doctors. What's that? What do they say? First, do no harm, right?
no harm.
That's we do the
Right.
same. We're the same, right?
That's right. Do no
So
harm.
anyway, I do think this has been a great conversation, and this again, this
Always.
is
I
our
love
book,
having us
Seeking
together.
Freedom.
Thank you for
And I hope
promoting that
people,
our
I
book.
hope people will take a look. Yeah,
Thank you
it's
for
a beautiful
promoting
book, and
that.
I'm so proud. Yeah,
I am proud of
and
it as well.
it's I love it's this book is deep in my heart, and it was a thrill to work with you too. I work
I'm
while I'm
looking
with you.
forward to
With
working with you again.
you worked your magic,
I'm
and
looking. I'm looking
I
forward to
just
working with you again.
oh thanks. Well, me too.
Yes,
Thank you. All
looking
right.
forward to it again.
Well, thanks so much. This has been a really great conversation, and have a great weekend. Thank
I
you
want to
everybody
leave
for
with this.
listening. And
I want to leave with this. When I was a young
mhm.
artist, I wanted to be the best artist in the world. As I got older and hopefully wiser, I realized that I wanted to be the best artist for the world, and that's
Oh,
what's
I love that.
yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.